It is the year 1177 BC. Civilization was experiencing one of the brightest eras human history had ever seen. Kings are drinking wine from golden goblets. Merchant ships are constantly transporting goods from the Aegean Sea to the Nile River and from there to the Euphrates. The world is within a massive network that appears interconnected, wealthy, and invincible. Egyptians, Hittites, Canaanites, Cypriots, and Mycenaeans. They were the global powers of the ancient age. And then, one of the greatest mysteries in human history occurred. Within just 40 years, they all vanished. Palaces were burned, kings were killed, trade stopped, and even reading and writing were forgotten. The world was plunged into a dark age that would last for centuries. So how could such powerful empires collapse so quickly? Who destroyed them? Or had they paved the way for their own end? To understand the collapse, we must first understand what was lost. The world of the 1200s BC was much more modern in structure than you might think. Just as New York, London, Tokyo, and Shanghai are connected today, in that era, Hattusa, Thebes, Mycenae, and Ugarit were connected. We call this the Bronze Age, because the technology that made the world go round was bronze. However, there was a problem here. To make bronze, you need two metals, copper and tin. Copper is easily found. For example, the island of Cyprus is full of copper. But tin was very rare at that time. It had to come from Afghanistan, that is, from thousands of kilometers away. This meant the following: no kingdom could survive on its own. If the Hittites wanted to make weapons, they were dependent on tin coming from Afghanistan and copper coming from Cyprus. If the Egyptian pharaoh wanted to decorate his palace, he was dependent on artists coming from the Aegean. This was history's first global economy. How do we know this? Because we found their letters. Diplomatic archives show that kings addressed each other as "my brother." The Egyptian pharaoh could write a letter to the Hittite king and reproach him, asking, "Why did you not send me the gifts you promised?" Of course, there were wars, like the Battle of Kadesh, but diplomacy and trade always prevailed, and it was thought that this order would last forever. In the south, there was the Egyptian Empire, a colossal power fed by the abundance of the Nile, under the rule of legendary pharaohs like Ramses II. They had so much gold that neighboring kings would say, "Gold in Egypt is as plentiful as dust." In the north, in the harsh geography of Anatolia, the Hittites reigned. They struck fear with their disciplined armies and war chariots. In the west, in today's Greece, there were the Mycenaeans, the warrior society that attacked Troy, described by Homer in the Iliad. They were the masters of the sea. And in the center, the heart of trade, Ugarit. As the year 1200 BC approached, everything seemed to be going well. However, this interconnected system, that is, globalization, had a weak point: the domino effect. If one part of the system collapsed, it would all collapse. And the things that would trigger that collapse had appeared on the horizon. But while the kings feasted in their palaces, they could not see the approaching disaster. The threat was not coming from a single place. From nature, from the land, and from the sea, a total doomsday scenario was being prepared. The chain of events you are about to see will also shed light on the fragility of our modern world, because the people of the Bronze Age, just like us, were saying, "Nothing will happen to us." But they were wrong.
When solving a murder, detectives first look for a single culprit. Who was the killer in the Bronze Age? But as the case unfolds, we see that the killer was not a single person. In the early 1200s BC, long before enemy ships appeared on the horizon, the land began to betray its people. For years, archaeologists thought that the destroyed cities were only destroyed by war. But they noticed something strange in the excavations: skeletons trapped under the collapsed walls, unable to escape, and bent, twisted city walls. Today, seismologists call this an earthquake storm. Between 1225 and 1175 BC, an incredible amount of seismic activity occurred in the region stretching from the North Anatolian fault line to the Aegean Sea. For 50 years, there were relentless earthquakes. Cities were fully rebuilt, only to be destroyed again. Troy Sixth, a layer of Troy, was destroyed not by a siege, but probably by a major earthquake. Earthquakes don't just destroy buildings, they demoralize. People began to believe the gods had abandoned them, but the gods' wrath was far from over. Earthquakes were terrifying, but what truly killed people came silently: drought. When scientists examined pollen samples taken from ancient lake beds in Syria and Cyprus, they encountered shocking data. Around 1200 BC, rainfall in the Mediterranean basin had drastically ceased. This wasn't a drought of 1 or 2 years, it was a climate change that lasted for decades. The evidence is hidden in the archives. One of the last kings of the Hittite Empire, in a letter to the Egyptian pharaoh, abandoned diplomatic courtesy. He pleaded, "Send me grain urgently. There is famine in my country. This is a matter of life and death." The powerful armies of Anatolia were starving. Egypt, as the breadbasket of the Old World, did its best and sent grain north by ship. But at a certain point, even the Nile River began to recede. Now put yourself in the shoes of an ordinary person living in that era. The land is not yielding crops. Your house has been damaged in an earthquake. Your king is sitting in his palace, still demanding taxes. What would you do? This is where the system collapse theory comes into play. When famine begins, the social contract breaks down. Many archaeological findings show that some cities were burned from within, not from an external enemy. In the Mycenaean palaces in Canaanite cities, there are traces of the people rebelling against their own rulers. Storehouses were plundered, the ruling class was targeted, the flow of copper and tin stopped because trade routes became unsafe. No copper, no bronze. No bronze, no weapons. No weapons, no authority. Empires had become paper tigers. The Hittites were struggling with famine. The Mycenaeans were fighting each other. Egypt was trying to stop the starving refugees at its borders. The world was defenseless, weak, and ready to crumble. In the midst of this chaos, sails appeared on the horizon. No one knew exactly who they were, nor where they came from. All they knew was that they left no stone unturned wherever they went. Historians called them the Sea Peoples, and they were coming to deliver the final blow to this already dying world. The real apocalypse was just beginning.
The Egyptians called them those who came from the sea. Modern historians call them Sea Peoples. They were not a single nation: Peliset, Cheker, Shekelesh, Denyen. They were like a swarm of locusts. It was a massive wave of migration, moving both by land and sea, with their families, animals, and all their possessions loaded onto carts. They were hungry, they were desperate, and they were determined to destroy everything in their path. The clearest evidence of this destruction was found in the city of Ugarit, the heart of trade. Archaeologists found a clay tablet in the city's ruins, left to bake in an oven but never retrieved. The city was attacked so suddenly that the scribe didn't even have time to take the letter out of the oven. The last letter written by the king of Ugarit to the king of Cyprus was practically a cry for help. "Father, behold, the enemy's ships have arrived. They have burned my cities and inflicted great damage on my country. All my soldiers and chariots are in the Hittite land. All my ships are in the land of Lukka. My country has been abandoned defenseless. Know this, the 7 enemy ships that arrived have inflicted unspeakable evils upon us." Shortly after this letter, Ugarit was wiped off the map. It was never rebuilt. That brilliant center of trade turned into a ruin that would sleep beneath the earth for thousands of years. In the north, the Hittite Empire, once thought invincible, collapsed silently. The Sea Peoples entered from the coasts of Cilicia, southern Anatolia. The Hittite army,
already struggling with famine and civil war, could not stop this new and barbaric wave. Hattusa was plundered and set ablaze one last time. The lights went out in Anatolia. Ramses III describes this domino effect in the inscriptions in his temple as follows: "No country could stand against their weapons. Hatti, Kode, Carchemish, Arzawa, and Alashia all were cut down in a single blow." Their target was clear: the last remaining treasure of the world, Egypt. 1177 BC. The Sea Peoples were at the gates of Egypt. Pharaoh Ramses III was aware of this danger. He planned to meet them not in the open sea, but at the mouth of the Nile, in the shallow waters of the delta. This was a trap. The Egyptian navy and the archers on the shore subjected the enemy ships to crossfire. The Sea People's ships could not maneuver. They capsized the ships with hooks. The water turned to blood. Ramses recorded this battle as a victory. He had the following inscribed on the walls: "I have taken their hearts and souls forever. I stand like a wall of fire at the mouth of the sea. Those who reach the shore are put to the sword." Egypt had won the war. It had stopped the invasion. But this was the most expensive victory in history. The army was exhausted. The treasury was empty. Egypt survived, but it could never again return to its former strength, to those glorious days of empire. It lost the Canaanite lands on its borders. Its influence diminished, and slowly it withdrew into itself. The war was over. Some of the Sea Peoples had been destroyed, and some had settled on the shores of Palestine, which we call Philistines today. But the remaining scene was terrible. The great kingdoms were gone. Trade routes were cut off. Diplomacy was over. Civilization had been reset to zero. Now the question was, how would the survivors emerge from this wreckage, and what had humanity forgotten?
When the storm subsided, only silence remained. By 1130 BC, almost all the great palaces in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean had been abandoned. 75% of the population had disappeared or migrated to mountain villages. Historians call this period the Greek Dark Ages. Dark because there were no written documents left to enlighten us. The collapse was so deep that people forgot how to write. Yes, you heard right. The Linear B writing system used in Greece completely disappeared. For centuries, Greeks became an illiterate society. Even Homer's epics were carried orally in the memories of bards for centuries before being written down. Not just writing, fine wall painting, fresco art, international diplomacy, all evaporated within a generation. Humanity had reverted to survival mode. They were only trying to feed themselves. But every crisis creates its own solution. Because trade routes were cut off, tin was unavailable. Without tin, bronze could not be made. People were forced to turn to another metal, iron. Iron was preferred not because it was better than bronze, but because it was found everywhere. Previously, only the armies of kings could afford bronze armor, but iron was cheap. Now ordinary people could also make weapons and agricultural tools. The old world had collapsed, but this collapse had democratized technology. The Bronze Age had ended, and the Iron Age had begun. The absence of vast empires, the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, created a power vacuum. And in this vacuum, new and more flexible civilizations sprouted. The Phoenicians, a trading society, ventured out to sea and spread the alphabet we use today. In the land of Canaan, new structures like the Kingdom of Israel emerged from the ruins, and in Greece, from within that dark age, the city-states, Athens, Sparta, that would later give birth to democracy and philosophy, began to rise. If the Bronze Age hadn't collapsed, perhaps classical antiquity would never have happened. So why is this story from 3,200 years ago important to us? Because we are like the people of the Bronze Age. They were dependent on tin and copper. We are dependent on microchips and oil. They faced climate change. So are we. They said, "We are great. We will never sink." We say the same. The year 1177 BC teaches us this. Civilization is a much more fragile thread than we think. As complexity increases, so does the risk of collapse. History is a mirror of the future. We don't have to share the fate of the Hittites or the Mycenaeans, but to do so, we shouldn't ignore the mistakes they made. Thank you for joining us on this 40-minute journey. Do you think our modern world is more resilient than the Bronze Age civilizations? Or are we heading to our own 1177 year? I look forward to your thoughts in the comments. Until our next journey through history, goodbye.